Hello to everyone listening. Mary and Louis are back again, and welcome to episode 4 of Let's Masdebate.
Today's topics up for discussion are that of body hair and the complicated cycle of menstruation.
All sounds pretty juicy and very interesting topics.
Yeah, definitely. They are very relevant and thought-provoking topics, and unfortunately they do have many stigmas associated to them.
They definitely do, which of most we're going to chat about and really break down. These stigmas can have a real negative impact on young women and men who may not have had a lot of information available to them.
Yeah, where you get that information and consequently what that information is on these topics can be really influential on what you might think is and isn't normal for you to be experiencing, either when just starting your period or maybe even years down the line.
And raising the awareness of these stigmas can hopefully prevent some impacts of miscommunication on these important topics.
Shake it up, be cruel, work it out, do you.
So then, Mary, I think being a woman and experiencing menstruation kind of puts you at a slight advantage at this topic.
Yeah, maybe, but I think it is very important for men to also learn about the effects and changes that the menstrual cycle can have to women and non-binary people, even though they're not kind of experiencing it directly.
Yeah, I agree, and we sure can experience it indirectly.
Yeah, the fluctuation of my mood alone during the different stages of a menstrual cycle is something that you get the lovely pleasure of experiencing.
Ah, what a pleasure indeed. I definitely have to come to terms with me being in trouble a lot more, maybe a day or two before you get your period.
Yeah, sorry about that, but it is what it is. So what stereotypes or stigmatisms are you personally familiar with, or maybe some that you've heard either when you were going through puberty or just that's generalised in the media?
Yeah, so the first thing that springs to my mind is sort of the shame that's associated to being on your period. I know that it can be a difficult subject to talk about, and a lack of information has obviously really contributed to damaging the misconceptions and discrimination against women, or those who may not identify as women but still have a period.
Yeah, I think it is important to keep people who don't identify as women in the circle of menstruation.
Yeah, they're still a big part of the conversation.
Definitely. Just because you don't identify as a woman and you still have a uterus, it doesn't invalidate the experiences that you have alongside having a period, no matter what Piers Morgan thinks. But these taboos and myths can actually have a really negative impact on young people. They can cause them to miss out on just normal childhood experiences and activities, as well as preventing the development of healthy habits with boys and girls.
I imagine it's safe to assume that you've been through much of this, Mary.
Yeah.
So maybe you'd like to tell us just a bit about your first period and how you dealt with it. Were you comfortable with the topic? Do you remember how you felt at the time?
Oh God, my first period. That must have been like 10 years ago now, and even though I had an older sister, it still didn't make it normalised in my house.
She didn't tell you what to do?
No, we didn't have a very close relationship. She was quite nasty, but we won't go into that. So we weren't very close. We definitely did not have the kind of relationship that I felt asking her questions about personal topics. And when it first happened to me, it was quite traumatizing because I definitely didn't have the information or the normalization of periods to feel comfortable to talk about it with people in my family or friends.
So what did you do then?
Well, it's quite embarrassing to say, but I waited like 2 cycles before being able to build up the courage to just tell my mum. Like when you're a teenager, when you're 12, and I was 12 I think when I got it. It doesn't all just happen at once. Well, it didn't for me. It was like
Right, so it was a bit more gradual.
It was quite gradual, and it took a couple of cycles for it to properly happen and me need sanitary products.
For it to become a problem.
Yeah. I remember sitting in the bathroom and being like, oh my God, what do I do? I did not feel comfortable just going to my mum and saying, I've got my period.
Oh no. So, I mean, to me that doesn't sound like a good start in developing healthy habits.
Yeah.
So who did support you in the end?
I did eventually go and tell my mum, but I was so shy, and didn't even feel comfortable using the word period.
Right.
It's quite embarrassing for me to say, but I literally went over to her and was like, you know that thing that my sister gets when she can't go swimming?
Can't go swimming.
And she understood what I meant by that, even though I was clearly very embarrassed. And the first thing she did is go downstairs and tell my dad.
Perfect.
I was mortified.
Yeah.
It made the bad situation much worse. It definitely developed a negative relationship with me and my menstrual cycle. I definitely didn't like it happening and didn't feel comfortable asking for products. I remember as a kid...
I can imagine you wouldn't want to bring it up with your mum, because the first time you did, that's the result.
Yeah, and as a teenager, I would be dying through menstrual cramps and just have to lie. I wouldn't feel comfortable to be like, oh, I've got really bad cramps. I'd just say that I felt sick.
Oh, every month?
Every month. It just wasn't a very positive experience.
No, it definitely sounds like it wasn't. I don't think telling your mum that you got your period is really included in basic sex ed here, is it?
No, the school nurse definitely didn't come in and say, this is how you tell your mum that you've got your period. It was throwing a tampon in a glass of water and being like, this is going to happen to you for the rest of your life.
Interesting. Okay, I actually have some very interesting and kind of crazy facts about menstruation, if you would like to hear them.
Yeah, shoot.
Okay, did you know that on average a woman spends 7 years of her life just menstruating?
What? 7 years
7
just
years.
bleeding? That's just bleeding?
Just bleeding. To put that into perspective, you spend 25 years asleep.
Wow.
You spend 7 years bleeding
7 years just
out
bleeding.
your vagina.
That's mad. Because, yeah, when you think about it, if you start at 12 and you stop menstruating when you're in your, 50s, that's a good 40 years. And 7 of them you just spend in pain.
According to this Bustle article, around the world, only 12% of young people with periods have access to the products they need. So that's pretty much the absolute minority.
That's pretty
And
sad.
in India, more than 8 in 10 people, like 80%, don't have access to menstrual products.
8 in 10.
Yeah, that's most of them.
That is definitely most.
Yeah, and I can imagine that's going to be putting a lot of young Indian women at a disadvantage.
Yeah, because if you don't have sanitary products, you definitely don't feel comfortable like going to school.
No.
I can imagine just free bleeding at school. I remember having sanitary products at school and still feeling uncomfortable, like checking my seat as you get up just in case.
Oh no. The same is true actually for an estimated 50,000 people who are homeless in the United States.
That is a big issue, actually. The fact that sanitary products are taxed as a luxury item is insanity.
Are they a luxury item?
No, they're an absolute goddamn necessity.
Yes, they are.
You cannot live a modern, socially acceptable life with just free bleeding.
No, you can't. It's not really doable in today's society.
No, and it's so frustrating that it's the case, as condoms are free and sex is not something that you have to go through.
Yeah, I mean, can't you get the contraceptive pill off the NHS here?
Yeah, exactly.
But you can't get
free tampons.
Wow.
You can't get free tampons. It's very much a male world that we live in.
That is very unfortunate.
And it just really shows the period stigmatization and it having real consequences. It prevents people from having access to basic necessities and it really impedes on their education and career opportunities. I think that teaching everyone about periods equally and talking about it openly is necessary in order to address the reality of the period problems around the world and help reduce the stigma overall.
Yeah, definitely. So, moving on from that, another topic that I think doesn't get discussed very often but definitely does need to be is having sex on your period.
Yeah, period sex. That is a huge stigma around periods, and this is a sex podcast, so I think it is quite appropriate that we do have a little discussion about period sex.
Yeah, because, I mean, the stigmatisms associated to period sex, I think, can have a real negative impact on people's sex lives.
Definitely, and can cause a lot of embarrassment for women as well if they're having their period and they still want to engage in sex, but they don't feel comfortable telling their partner that they're on their period, or they might think that it's not sexy anymore and they might just have a negative response. I remember when we first started dating and I got my first period when we were together and I was like, I don't know whether I should just tell him beforehand before I go over that I'm on my period and he might not want to have sex with me, or I just go and just be like, I'm on my period, or not even say anything. It's quite a situation to be in.
It shouldn't be such a big deal in the first place, should it? It
No,
shouldn't be
definitely
viewed
not.
like that.
Yeah, and I know at school, hearing the mention of period sex was always in a very negative light, and it was something that was definitely not approved of by our peers.
Right, and I think education about period sex is so important. All genders should know that the stigmas associated to it being dirty or gross is wrong, because how are you going to assign that to periods? They happen monthly.
The fact that it has so much of an effect on your life, just making it a negative experience, can really have a really big negative impact.
Yeah, I think the only way to do that is to teach what to expect to happen if you and your partner do want to have sex while menstruating.
Yeah, there is a massive misconception of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think one of the main ones is that it's going to be like a big explosion of blood.
Oh, really?
But I think if you do heavily menstruate, that could happen. But it's only going to, like for me personally, it only lasts like a couple of days where it's really bad, and then for the rest of the time it's barely noticeable, especially
Yeah.
if we have sex. I think it's important to be educated on the fact that it is possible to have sex while you're on your period, and that it is
Yeah.
pleasurable and enjoyable.
I didn't even know that it was.
No, because it's not spoken about in sex
No.
education that you can still have sex while you're menstruating. And the fact that it is just left out, you can assume that it's not possible.
Yeah, I definitely did. I thought, what, so does it just not work?
Yeah, can you just not have sex?
Is it just not allowed?
It's not
Don't know.
allowed.
So, I mean, yeah, it can get messy, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't take away from the experience and the ability to enjoy yourself.
Yeah, and it's also been proven that having sex while on your period can be quite a reliever for menstrual cramps. I think I read that having orgasms, the whole influx of hormones and pleasure and stuff, it can really relieve cramps and tension that's built up.
Pretty handy.
Yeah, definitely. And it is quite common for women to be very horny on their period. There is a massive fluctuation of hormones and desires. It's quite normal to want more sex while you're on your period. And if you're in a relationship where you feel comfortable having sex on your period, there is no reason why you should deter from it if it's both something that you want to do.
Yeah, and with that, I just want to say that it's totally fine if you don't feel comfortable doing it and waiting until your period is over. But it's also okay if you want to experiment and still have sex.
Yeah, both ways, totally fine. Don't feel pressure to, and don't feel pressure not to. Just chuck a towel down. Don't let anyone make you feel like you're less sexy because you're menstruating. It's just a bit of blood at the end of the day.
Just a bit of blood.
So, the other topic of today's podcast that we are going to talk about is the stigmatisms that are associated to body hair.
Ah, yes. Body hair definitely has a lot of myths and negative connotations, particularly for women, and it really shouldn't.
Yeah, I've had personally so many negative experiences where I've made to feel less feminine or not as cute and attractive just because I have body hair, or I've personally chosen not to shave. I remember at school, in secondary school, there was a massive pressure to shave, huge pressure. If you're having PE in shorts and you have hairy legs, without a doubt, you would have been ridiculed and teased. I felt so pressured to shave, even though I wasn't in an environment at home where I felt comfortable to ask for razors or hair removal cream. So I would literally steal them from my dad and use them to shave my legs, because I just couldn't deal with feeling so inadequate and in PE.
Oh, wow. That's quite upsetting.
Yeah, and it can really have a negative impact on your education as well, because you should be able to enjoy those sports at school without feeling the pressure just to shave your legs or your armpits.
Yeah, I mean, what if you were really into PE and
I loved PE, and I thought when I was in the changing room and I hadn't shaved my legs, I literally covered them with my arms when I'd sit down and just hope that no one noticed.
oh, that's awful.
Yeah, and the beauty standards of a literal 13-year-old are crazy. Like, you're expected to remain hairless to be socially acceptable. It's just not a way to make young, impressionable, pubescent girls feel.
Yeah, it's pretty sad.
Being comfortable to shake the idea that you needed to shave to be feminine is pretty important. And I don't think I stopped routinely shaving until a couple of years ago. And now I just do it if I want to. Like, I feel no pressure to do it, even if I'm going on holiday, or we went to Cornwall with your family a couple of weeks ago and I was the only girl sat there in shorts with hairy legs. And I don't know if I felt judged, but I definitely felt myself.
Good, as you should. I mean, anyways, women hair it's very different to the hair of a man. It's not so thick and coarse. Like
Yeah.
it's still feminine in its own right, I think.
Yeah, the implication that it's not feminine because it's hair is mad. Like, you're expected to have longer hair on your head to be feminine. That's feminine. But hair on your legs is not feminine.
So confusing.
Even though the hair women grow is completely different to the hair that men grow. Like, I have hairy legs right now, and it's just soft and...
Nothing like mine.
yeah, like, up past my knee. You literally can't even see it. It's pretty mad that you should feel like you have to get rid of it to just feel feminine and sexy.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. I mean, I remember in school people would call me Wolf Boy and stuff because I had hair growing between my eyebrows and that sort of thing, and I had
Yeah.
hairy legs before any of the other boys did.
Oh, really?
And I think that was perceived as pretty weird.
Yeah, the implication as well to have like 2 defined eyebrows is pretty
I did not
high
have
beauty
that
standard.
growing up. But yeah, that is a high beauty standard. Like, do I have to be standing there at 11 years old plucking my eyebrows in the mirror just to not get teased? I should probably be doing other stuff.
You've got much more important things to be doing other than plucking your eyebrows, I'll tell you that. And also, another thing that really, really makes me mad
Oh yeah, what grinds your gears?
is when my friends have definitely, and I've definitely done it before, is to apologise for not shaving. Like,
Oh, sorry, I've not shaved my legs.
like, literally, you'd sit down with my friends, and one of them, or if you've not shaved, they're like, oh, sorry, I've not shaved. And I'm literally like, do not apologise for that.
Yeah.
That is not something that you should feel like you should have to apologise. Do you think a guy sits down with his guy friends with hairy legs and he's like, sorry lads, I've not shaved my legs? It's just misogynistic.
Yeah.
It's mad too, and it's mad that girls have got it in their heads that they need to shave to be socially acceptable just in their group of friends.
Yeah, it's crazy. If you want to shave, by all means. But if you don't want to shave, do not feel pressured to.
Yeah, it's like, I'm your friend. I'm not going to judge you or even notice if you've got hairy legs. Like, that is your personal decision.
Yeah.
And I honestly felt so... It relieves the pressure, societal pressure to shave when you take it into your own head that you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah, it should never really be for someone else.
No, definitely not. And that reminds me of last year at my sister's wedding. My mum, prior to the wedding, asked me if I would shave my armpits. She was like, can you shave your armpits for the wedding? There's going to be loads of photos and stuff. And I was just like, no, what? Why would me having hairy armpits or me having armpit hair that it wasn't even displayed? She clearly has never grown out her armpit hair to
No.
understand that if you're not raising your arms, you can't see it. You can see yours
Yeah.
because men's hair is so much thicker and grows a lot more on their body. But for me, yeah, it grows and it's kind of long, but it's not going to poke out.
No.
But even if it does, that shouldn't
It's
matter.
not going to ruin your wedding
It's not going to
photo.
ruin your wedding photo. That's a ridiculous conception, and I just didn't. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. That is wrong for you to ask me to do that.
Yeah. We have now reached the part of our wonderful podcast where we answer a sexual pleasure and wellness question that has been submitted by an anonymous survey response. Mary, would you like to read out the question?
Yeah, the question is shaving down there normal/necessary? Would I be ridiculed if I didn't? So I assume shaving down there means like vagina or penis or
Yeah,
balls in general.
we don't know the gender
They don't know
of
the gender, so
okay.
we're just assuming genitals.
genital shaving.
Male and female, but even though I think it's probably more important to discuss the stigmas around females because I think there
yeah,
is a much
absolutely.
higher standard of being hairless.
Yeah, definitely. There
So,
certainly is.
what is your personal opinion? If you were hooking up with a girl on a night out or just in general and they haven't shaved or they have a lot of pubic hair, what's your opinion?
I think that it's not down to me whether or not the girl should have a shaved vagina or not. It's not my decision. No matter what my preference is.
What is your personal preference?
I actually don't mind.
You don't mind either.
Yeah, if it's shaved, great. If it's not shaved, also great, you know.
Yeah.
Doesn't bother me.
Does there reach a point where you think that they should shave? Like, does it get too much where you can't access? I've seen memes of when she's not shaved and they're like hacking through a forest.
Hacking through a forest. I mean, that's a clear exaggeration. I've never experienced not being able to access.
No, I don't think it really happens unless you maybe have just never ever shaved. It might be a lot, but I don't think it becomes inaccessible.
No. Yeah, it's definitely...
I think it's nice to like... It's the same as your hair on your head. Keep it trimmed if you want to. You pick your own haircut.
Yeah, you do.
You don't judge someone for having a bald head or lots of hair on your head compared to if it's on their vagina. It doesn't really seem fair.
No.
Especially, where does it derive from, do you think? Having a hairless vagina has been seen in media to be the beauty standard.
Yeah.
But surely... I just find it a little bit weird because you don't have hair before you reach puberty. Like, are you looking for a more prepubescent vagina?
I couldn't tell you. I don't.
I don't understand. I understand
it.
there's a preference, and I'm not saying that if you like a shaved vagina, you're a paedophile. Like,
No,
that's definitely not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to establish where this standard has derived from.
Yeah, what's its source?
What's its source? Yeah, but because there's definite trends of having hair and not having hair, and the way that you can style and shave and shape your pubic hair is something fun to experiment with. I definitely have done that before, and it is quite cute. But shaving is very, very high maintenance, especially keeping like a completely smooth area.
Yeah, people are busy. I never have time.
No, I cannot imagine having enough time to keep it bald 24/7. Like, and it's kind of painful too.
Yeah.
When it grows back, it's just...
Spiky.
I guess you just don't let it grow back, but
No,
I guess you've got to let it grow back to shave.
But then you've got to shave it all the time, and then you're getting irritation on your skin, probably.
Yeah, definitely.
Would I be ridiculed if I didn't? Some people are real nasty, I'm afraid.
I've got a example of this where this standard was imposed to me. I was in an English class in secondary school, and I was sat next to this boy, and he was having a conversation with his friend that was sat like a couple of tables behind, and I overheard him say, if I was getting with a girl and she hadn't shaved, I would go to the bathroom, get her a razor, and make her do it before I had sex with her.
She will never ever go to your house ever again.
Literally, she just wouldn't do it. Any self-respecting woman, if a boy asks you to shave, you should not adhere to that. You should be like, why? Why is it okay for you to have body hair and me
Should
not?
just hand it back and be like, you first.
Yeah, you first. Make sure your balls are absolutely spotless before I shave my vagina for you.
I don't care how many times you nick that saggy skin with a razor.
Nice. Yeah, but that how old was how old would that have been? I think it was like year 8.
Year 8? What?
It was like below year 9. I think it must have been around year 8. Could you imagine? And that is
like
very
13.
That is a very toxic opinion to have in such an influential stage of your life and growing up sexually.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine these boys are probably watching that mainstream porn we were talking about with
their toxic masculinity, implying that these women have to adhere to these standards that are portrayed in mainstream porn.
Yeah, they don't have hairy vaginas.
No, I'm sure there are porn that do have that, but...
Yeah, but I mean, I think the standard video that a 13-year-old stumbles across.
Asking if you would be ridiculed if you didn't shave is important, because it really probably depends on the person that you're having sex with.
Yeah.
If it's your partner, I think that you definitely have to address that in your relationship, because your partner should not make you feel inadequate because you haven't shaved. I understand that they have a personal preference, but it's your body, and what you do or do not do with it is, at the end of the day, completely your choice.
Yeah, I don't think there's that much space in a relationship to be shaming each other.
No, definitely not. So what do you think someone should do if they are in a situation and they haven't shaved and then they are subject to ridicule?
Yeah, because this question does imply a sexual scenario.
Yeah.
So if you're receiving ridicule, so I assuming this is going to be probably before you're having sex with the person.
Yeah.
If you're receiving ridicule, my best advice would be to leave. They're probably not the right guy to be sleeping with if they're imposing that on you.
No, No, I don't think anyone has the right to impose that kind of shame on you. And if it is someone that you're just spontaneously choosing to have sex with, I think the best decision is to remove yourself from that situation, because it's not the kind of positive sex experience that you should be having. You should be having an intimate experience with someone that respects you.
Yeah, definitely.
And respects your choices to have body hair or not.
Yeah.
And if they don't respect that decision, then it's quite a big indicator of the kind of person that they are. They're trying to impose these beauty standards on you that really aren't their choice to impose.
No, definitely not.
Especially if it's a one-way thing. If they have pubic hair and they expect you not to have pubic hair, that's a very hypocritical scenario to be in, and just a really toxic situation.
Yeah, extremely.
It can have a really negative impact. I remember hearing what I said about that young boy saying that, and it just made me fear having a sexual experience with someone and me not having shaved.
Wow.
Are they actually gonna tell me to shave? Are they gonna notice my body hair and be like, oh, I'm not sure if I'm gonna have sex with you? Because at the end of the day, I've slept with multiple people and I've shaved, not shaved, had body hair. Never has it ever been mentioned.
Of course not.
It will, without a doubt, I can probably 99% of the time can guarantee that it will not be mentioned.
Yeah.
Especially if it's
not in a relationship.
Not in a relationship.
Casual sex.
Yeah, if you're having casual sex, I think that is a good term to refer to it as. If you're having casual sex with someone and you haven't shaved, I don't think it will ever be mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And if it is, I don't think that's the person that you should be having sex with.
No. So, yeah, hypothetically, if it was to happen after sex, then I'd probably just say stop seeing that person, or maybe talk to them about it if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, I think the normalization of body hair should promote conversations with people and what you have a preference. If I had a preference for what you were shaving and I wanted to
simply let me know about it. Yeah,
that should be a conversation that you should be able to have with your partner.
Yeah.
And I think normalizing body hair on men and women is very important, because it can have a really negative impact on your life if you're feeling any kind of shame or standard that you feel like you have to live up to.
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's important now to just do a little recap of the topics that we've covered and the overall message that we're trying to give on these stigmatisms and how they can have an impact on your life and the correct attitude to have towards them.
Yeah.
So number 1, I think, is the normalization of periods.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's so important for that to become more normal in our society and for people to be able to talk about it, because I think a lot of negative experiences could just so easily be avoided with knowledge and conversation.
Yeah, and I think it's important for both men and women and, well, all genders to be educated on periods. We're just focusing the education on women because they're experiencing directly can have a negative influence. If boys don't know what really happens emotionally, mentally and physically, how are you going to be able to promote a healthy conversation between all genders if one of them doesn't know enough about it?
Yeah, I can personally say that I've had to do so much of my own learning and research, because in school the only thing I learnt about periods was very basic biology of it.
Yeah, and it just has such an impact in women and non-binary persons' lives, because for the mass majority of your life you'll be menstruating, even if you choose to be on contraception and not be actually menstruating. A lot of women choose not to do that, and that's also completely fine.
Yeah.
And have a period each month, and it just does have a huge impact on your life and well-being and your sex life.
Yeah, and having sex on your period is a perfectly normal thing to do.
A very normal thing to do and a very pleasurable thing to do. I think if you're wanting to do that with a person or your partner, just go for it. Chuck a towel down, like I said.
Throw a towel down.
Try not to worry about it. And do not let anyone ever make you feel less sexy because you are menstruating.
Yeah, throw those hands up if anybody gives you shit about it.
Yeah, and body hair. Body hair on everyone is perfectly fine and perfectly natural. You should not feel like you have to remove it to adhere to some societal pressure. You can remove it if you want to. That is completely fine. If it makes you feel good and makes you feel sexy to remove it, then do it. Just know that you are not more feminine by removing it. I think that is one of the main things that I want to say.
Yeah, and that you should really be removing it for yourself and not for someone else or the wider opinion of society.
And if someone chooses not to have sex with you because you've not shaved your vagina, it is just don't have sex with them. Just leave.
Yeah,
That's the main advice that I can give for that, because there are people that will be absolutely fine and comfortable with your body hair, and those are the kind of people that you should be having that intimate experience with.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Fantastic. Well, that was a very successful and interesting episode of Let's Masturbate.
Yeah, I hope you learnt a lot.
Yeah, I definitely learn a lot from just talking to you about it.
Yeah, this has definitely, I think, had a positive effect on our relationship doing this podcast.
Yeah, because we've obviously already had all these conversations prior to recording and in our relationship, because we do have a very open relationship.
Yeah.
But I think getting into the nitty-gritty and delving into what is normal and what is acceptable is very good for our relationship.
Yeah, and it's so eye-opening. So,
yeah, well, thank you everyone for listening.
yep. See you next time.
Normalised periods.